This dresser is illegal. So is this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. In fact, our only dresser that would be legal to sell in the United States is this one. The problem with all of these is if you open all the drawers, they tip over. So the recommendation is that dressers should be anchored to the walls. Of course, hardly anybody does that. And that's a problem because furniture tip-overs have caused a few hundred fatalities in the United States over the past 20 years or so. Now a lot of those would be heavy old TVs falling onto kids, but I think a fair share of them are dressers tipping over. And to address this issue, benevolent governments have passed the Sturdy Act, which became effective September of last year. And that applies to any freestanding storage unit that is 27 inches or more in height, 30 pounds or more in weight, and holds 3.2 or more cubic feet in storage volume. And this one is just below 27 inches in height. And the requirement is that with all the drawers open that'll open, not just one, you have to be able to put 60 pounds of weight on here and it must not tip over. Now 60 pounds is, if I filled both of these buckets full of water and put them on here, it has to not tip over. There's just no way. But if the drawer only opened up this far, then it has a fair shot of not tipping over with all that weight on it. And I think the idea is if a toddler opens all the drawers on a dresser and then tries climbing up the front, it still must not tip over. And the way manufacturers make the furniture compliant is you make the cabinet deeper, add a weight to the back, and then use smaller drawers because the loading in the drawers also counts, and make them not open very far, and then it passes. And that's how you end up with new dressers that are big and heavy and deep, with drawers that hardly extend and hardly hold anything, and they just suck at storing stuff. Now in more expensive dressers, they'll add an interlock on the back so that you have to fully close one drawer before you can open another one, and that means they don't have to pass with all of them open, which makes it a little bit easier. But that would also kind of suck because when I'm sorting laundry, I usually have more than one drawer open. Now preventing kids from getting crushed by falling dressers is obviously a good thing, but let's try to analyze the cost of it. So let's assume a loss of storage efficiency in cheap dressers of 20% and for fancy ones just 10%. And let's assume the average is 15%. So we'll need that many more dressers. The population of the USA is 333 million. Let's assume there's half a dresser per person, so 166 million dressers. So you need an extra 25 million dressers. Now let's assume each dresser requires 7.5 square feet. That is basically for the dresser itself plus the space in front of it. So we need an extra 187 million square feet of real estate to hold the extra dressers that are needed because they've become less efficient. Now the average cost of rent in the USA is $1.70 per month per square foot. Assume homeowner costs are about the same. So we're looking at 318 million per month or about 3.8 billion annually in extra real estate cost. Now let's amortize that over fatalities. So we have 581 for this period, 71% involved a TV, but let's assume 50% of fatalities could be saved by better dressers, or compliant dressers. So we could have saved potentially 291 lives, or 13.2 per year. So dividing that into the 3.8 billion, we have $289 million per life saved. In that same time, we had 22,000 emergency visits for the same reasons, so applying the same ratios, that is 565,000 per emergency visit saved. That is a lot per life saved. Surely there must be other things that you could do to spend less than 289 million per life saved. Of course, I made a lot of assumptions, like half a dresser per person. It's probably more. A lot of these numbers I've been very conservative, so the costs could easily be twice that. Well, if you're worried about tip-overs, a compliant dresser is obviously a good thing. But if you're worried about storage efficiency, then maybe just attach your dressers to the wall or to the floor. A simple screw like this takes over half a ton to snap, so screwing to the floor is actually, I think, better because you don't end up with a thing in your wall that's hard to hide. But don't throw out your old dresser, and if you're a woodworker, it might be worth building your own dresser because if you can't buy a good one, then it's worth the time to build one. The Act also doesn't apply to dressers or storage units that are less than 27 inches high, so possibly some of the shorter ones don't suck, and maybe you could buy 2 of those and stack them together, although of course you should attach them together and maybe anchor them to the wall or the floor just to be on the safe side if you're worried about tip overs. Or you could just get a shelf and put your stuff in cardboard boxes or maybe wooden boxes of the right size and put those on the shelf. That's way more efficient than even a non-compliant dresser. You could also add legs like I did with this filing cabinet. I picked this up off the curb 10 years ago, and it was a lot deeper with a weight in the back, and I thought that was just a waste of weight and space, so I cut that off. And then if I opened the drawers, it got tippy, and those extra leg extensions fixed that. Of course, it is a tripping hazard. Oh. But maybe if your dressers were all mounted on a plywood base that extended this far out the front, with beveled edges for safety, that might be the most workable solution.